Yep.
You're live.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Rebels. Thanks for joining us this week. Very, very special week.
We have
Oh, go ahead.
fantastic guest with us. Ashley, take it away because I know you're thrilled to announce our guest.
Yes. So we have the voice of Ezra Bridger himself. Taylor Gray is joining us. Welcome, Taylor. Thanks for being here this week.
What's up, guys? Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is it's very exciting.
We are so happy to have you
excited.
here. As you know, I'm a huge, I got my Rebels t-shirt on.
I love
big
it.
Rebels fan. We met way back when the show first started, and you're brand new on the scene. And now, so many years later, we're still talking about Rebels. So much so that we have a YouTube show that is on, as I mentioned to you, every Monday. We've been doing this for almost a year now, and we talk Rebels. And Rebels seems to be hotter than ever. It's kind of crazy right now.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear. I think it's had this sort of resurgence being on Disney Plus, and with how interconnected everything is with Star Wars. A lot of people are needing to go back and get context, and also just seeing different characters pop up and hearing about. I mean, I was just at a convention this last week, and I haven't been to one in years, and so it was really sweet to hear from people. A lot of people who just seen the show in the last year or two, really.
Wow.
During COVID and the pandemic, they were like, yeah, we went through the entire show and we watched it a few times now, and it was just cool to hear that it's still out there and being consumed in different ways.
That is so
lasting
cool.
power here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just telling Mark, I wore my Rebels mural shirt, like the one from the epilogue, this past weekend at my other job, and people were coming up to me and like, oh my God, did you see the Mandalorian this week? I love Rebels so much. And it's just nice to have people that understood the content again, and just so cool that it's getting more popularity.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And the universe is so big. And like I was saying, it's so interconnected that we're seeing different storylines that went through Rebels and beyond Rebels and earlier than Rebels. So I think everything that Star Wars continues to put out is just all going to stay in that same vein where we have this huge universe and world that everything sort of is alive and plays in.
And interconnected, and in a way that makes a lot of sense too. We're talking about an original trilogy of movies, the prequels. Rebels was set close to the original trilogy, but after the prequels and before the new trilogy, and now we're in the Mandoverse. There are all these sort of confusing time periods and all these characters that intersect. But we're seeing in Mando right now, it's like sort of almost a Rebels called season 4.5 before we get to Rebels season 5 with the Ahsoka show. We just saw Zeb in live action, and I would never get Steve Bloom in trouble, but did he tell you he was doing that by any chance? Was he unrestricted?
He didn't. And it's funny because we all have like a group chat that we have had since the show, and it has been quieter as of recent just because there hasn't been anything that we've kept up with. But usually we tell each other if something like that is coming. Steve let that one slip. But I think it's for the better because it was really sweet to see Zeb pop up there. And also in that scene is Dave Filoni, right? And some of the other directors at the bar. There's always just little Easter eggs that honestly go over my head sometimes. And I love that fans of Star Wars are so good at finding every single one of them.
Okay, I woke up that morning and was your Twitter blowing up, Ashley? I couldn't stop.
Oh my God. I was so glad I woke up early to watch it because the internet just exploded with it. Like all my notifications going off. It just made me so happy. And to end that scene with Dave looking at Zeb, it was just like perfect.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Staying in the Mandoverse, and this was something very close to Ezra. We saw the Purgles in live action. Now, did your phone blow up in like a suspicious way? Like you thought like there was a tragedy that you needed to investigate? Like did people come running to you being like, did you see the Purgles?
Not quite, but yeah, anytime there is something that comes from Rebels that pops up, and even in trailers, I find that they're so sneaky with that, like little things that tease, like the back of a character, and they're like, oh, that's who, or when they were talking about a Jedi coming into the fray, everyone, that's when my phone starts going crazy where people are like, is it you? Is it you? And I'm like, guys, I have no idea. But I do love how diligent everybody is.
It's very cool.
Yeah, you can't put anything past these Star Wars fans.
No way.
Let's go back to the beginning though. I want to, so because we're in the Mandoverse now, we're seeing the spread of Rebels. Like Rebels is alive and well in the current streams of content, but I want to go back to the very beginning. 2014 into 2015. The show premiered in 2014. When did you first audition, get the call, and start recording? What was that whole process like? We're going back over 10, we're talking 10 years ago at this point now.
Yeah,
Crazy.
that is,
Wow.
isn't it? Nearly. It's actually, well, it's a funny story to me, but it nearly didn't happen for me because one, I'd never read for any voiceover stuff before. I had only done live action and theater before Rebels, and my agent at the time, she, like, I didn't have a voiceover agent. Now I do, but then she just sent me an audition the way she always did. But she was like, just record it in your closet. Like, you can have the lights off. Just don't. Normally you film yourself, kind of like how we are right here. Like I usually film in this room, actually. Just a blank background, and send it in. But she was like, don't turn your camera on. So I sent it in, and usually you hear within a couple weeks. It had been like a month and a half, nothing. And I was like, well, I guess I wasn't good at that anyways. Like, not much to lose. And I also didn't know what it was for, because they called it Wolf and everything. It was a bit suspicious, like how all of the code, like you had to type in a password to get the script and whatnot. But that happens with a handful of Marvel things as well. And like I had read for stuff in the past, but because I hadn't done any voiceover stuff, I didn't think anything of it. And a month and a half later, I get a call from my agent. She's like, hey, that thing that you sent that tape in for, they want to meet with you at the Disney Animation Studios, which are in Glendale here in California. And I was like, okay, sure. But the day that they wanted to do them, I was doing another TV show. And so I was filming, and I was like, if I can make it, I can make it. If not, okay. And obviously, as always happens, we went late, and I was sweaty. It was like a day I was having to, like, I was doing this rock climbing thing in the show, and so I was sweaty. I remember I was gross, and I had to drive across town. I was over on the west side. I get there 2 hours late. They'd been talking with them, like, hey, he'll come. I called my mom because I was a lot younger at the time, and this was still when, like, I would hit her up about anything, just like, I don't want to go in for this. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not prepared. My mind's still on this other thing that I was just working on. She's like, just go in and, like, if anything, have fun. Like, just do it for yourself. And I remember telling her, I was like, I'm not going in. Like, I'm already late. Like, this is so dumb. I end up going in. I remember I was wearing a backwards hat, which is very, for me, just strange. You never go into an audition doing that, but it was a Flyers hat. And Dave Filoni is famously a huge Pittsburgh Penguins fan. Huge.
Yeah.
And we're talking two Pennsylvania teams. I don't know any of this. Also, a lot of the people on Rebels were a lot smarter than I was. And they, from the script, like, in the dialogue, I think it was like 3 pages, the scene, or there might have been 2 scenes. They were calling, like, energy sticks and stuff like that. I had no clue. I thought I was reading from the Jungle Book, if I'm honest, because it was called Wolf. And there was, like, he was talking to a creature or something like that. But I met with Dave, and it was like the head of casting for Disney and maybe 3 other producers. I still had no clue. Like, my head was just in a different place. And so they had me do it a handful of different ways. And I remember thinking, like, who knows how that went? Because I'd never done anything like that before. And then a week later, I think it was, my agent called, and they were like, hey, they want to offer that thing to you. And it was Star Wars. And I was like, oh, shoot. Well, if you guys would have told me that, I probably would have fumbled it. Like, I had no clue what it was even for. And so at that point, I was like, oh, boy, let's go. And then, yeah, we went in. I don't know if you guys saw, they did these things initially, these, like, shorts that they put out. Like,
those are awesome.
To introduce the characters, and that was the first real jump into anything, because we had to go in and record like 5-10 minute things to, like, introduce our character, and that was about it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, those shorts were awesome too. Do you think not knowing it was Star Wars sort of kept you from freaking out, being nervous? Because I know you were a fan of Star Wars before you were part of Star Wars. I know it would have made me freak out for sure.
Probably, although I have a funny thing, like with my friends, I always tell them I grew up playing a lot of sports, and I always say, like, the more people that are in the gym, the higher the chance I'll make the shot. Like I really like to be, I like when there is a bit of pressure. Like if I'm just doing something by myself and it doesn't mean too much,
Right.
I sometimes can overlook it. Whereas if I knew Star Wars, I probably would have worked it even more. But there's something funny when we started working, Dave, I hadn't seen everything that Star Wars had put out. Like I hadn't seen the Clone Wars at the time we got the show. Whereas everyone outside of Tia, I believe, had on our show. And this came out in our first recording session. And Dave came up to me and he was like, don't watch it. Whatever you're at right now, stop. And you can watch everything after the show. But he was like, okay, your approach is exactly what we want for Ezra. Like there is this feeling like when he goes to space for the first time, everyone thinks like, oh, we're in Star Wars. Everyone has been to space. Everyone knows everything that's happened. He's like, that's not where these characters come from, especially a character like Ezra. When he first goes to space and he's like, oh my God, I'm in space. That's a very genuine reaction. And it was a really cool point that he made, that just because we're in this world, not everyone has this encyclopedic knowledge of the world the way certain characters do.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So cool. Ezra goes through a huge amount of growth during the series run. How much did you know ahead of time about Ezra's arc, and did you have any say in where it was going to go? Were you allowed to give any feedback towards it?
Yeah, it was incredibly collaborative, and having worked on a handful of other shows that have been much less successful and canceled a lot earlier than a show like this, there was way more collaboration than I expected. But to the first question, we would at the beginning of season, Dave would speak with each of us, which was really cool, and tell us that season's arc, just so we knew like where we were starting and where we were going to try to get to, and like the midpoint. And then before each session, we would do a sort of debrief of about like a half an hour, 45 minutes with everyone, where he would talk us through the episode and the key points that he really wanted us to take from it. But the conversations at the beginning of seasons were really big because it helped us sort of map out. Normally when you get like a film script, you know where your character is going to end up. So I character journal and I have it, so I know each step of the script. Whereas with this, you would get each script before the session. So I didn't know what was going to be in episode 8. And we weren't getting as many story points as we were character points, like where the character was going to be going. So that helped a lot. And then I would say once we were in past probably the first season, we all asked a lot of questions naturally, because if you're doing something live action, I know how far away someone is. I can see their reaction. I see how they're saying it. I have a real grasp of the world. Whereas with this, they haven't animated anything yet. So I was definitely asking Dave so many questions about like, am I above them? How far away? Am I yelling at them? How did they respond to me? Just to really find what the atmosphere was that we were playing with. But then after the first season, he was so cool about going, if we were like, can I try it this way? He's like, yeah, you know this character as well as anybody. Do it how you feel. Or especially with dialogue, if he was like, if this doesn't sound right to what you believe your character would be doing, make it sound like Ezra. And so that was something that was really cool, that you don't always get that sort of liberty on other projects. So the collaborative aspect was really nice.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I've heard that you guys recorded together quite frequently as a main cast. Not always true with the guest stars who would pop in, but like you, Freddie, Tia, Vanessa, probably Dave. I guess Dave did his chopper stuff in secret, but the four of you seem like, and Steve, did I say Steve? The four of you guys really feel like a family, and it comes across that way in the show. Did you do most of your recording as a quartet, I guess?
We did. I've come to find out that not many animated shows do that, I guess. Whereas I thought that was the norm, because with this, we were always together. I would say almost every session, even for, it might have been season 2 or season 3. I moved to New York for a year, and I would fly in to do the sessions and fly back like every other week, just so we would always be together. And I think it really, really comes through, because talking about all of Star Wars, my favorite stuff is the like movies 4, 5, and 6. And because I just love the rapport of that unit, I could really watch them do anything, because they had all of the relationships were specific, all of the characters were specific. You felt like you were in the ship with them, and it was really cool. And something that I feel like my favorite part of Rebels personally is the rapport that we had, these sort of interpersonal relationships between each one of us. Like Ezra's relationship with every character on the Ghost was very specific and different, and the play between all of them, and the sort of inside jokes and the banter and the things that hurt their feelings and that their objectives all mattered to each other. And I really, really appreciated that. And I think some of that comes through because of us recording together. You had this bounce in the room that often I could guess what take was going to be used, because you could feel it. It was so energetic and dynamic. Whereas I've now done a couple things in the animated space outside of Rebels, and it's not the same. You're in a booth, like saying every line 8 different ways, 8 different times, just hoping that one of them will match up with how they've responded to you. And it's something I really, really loved about Rebels.
I love the rapport.
Too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I love the rapport between Zeb and Ezra. It's kind of like bratty brothers causing trouble and adding Chopper to the mix, where he's just like poking the bear. Did you and Steve have that kind of rapport off screen, like while you were recording, just kind of like goofing around and having that come
yeah we it's funny, a lot of the other cast members of Rebels say it more often than I do, but I actually agree. They always say that we're all very much like our characters, and I think that happens a lot on any gig. Like, you're playing a character and you have this sort of dynamic with the other characters in space while you're playing the role, and you sort of assume that role. And like Freddie very much so was taking on this sort of Jedi master who was imparting wisdom and knowledge in different ways. And Vanessa always likes to say she's the space mom. And Steve is such a lovable, amazing goofball, and we would have so much fun. And when it would be just him and I, we ramped up the play. I mean, we were always sort of playing when the 5 of us were in the booth together, but between us, that was always a fun thing, because we would just have so many laughs. And it came through in the dynamic, even when we're sort of poking fun at each other. There was also this love there, and it was really like a brotherly love. There was a sort of sibling nature to it, and also just the size of him. I think Steve played Zeb so well. And I think once we really all got our footing, I'd say early days of the first season, you can feel us sort of trying different things, which is natural because the crew wasn't together yet. They were in some ways, but Ezra meets them the same way the audience meets them at the very beginning. And so as they're sort of ironing things out, I think by the second season, you really feel how deep those relationships and love go.
Yeah, you can definitely hear it in the dialogue. It comes across, and I've met all of you guys individually, all fantastic people, by the way. As Taylor said, he was at a convention last weekend. I'm glad you guys are back up to doing those again. I know Vanessa was saying this was the first one she had done in a while. If anyone's listening in the chat, if you see Taylor or Vanessa or Tia or Freddie, I know Freddie does them sometimes, and Steve, definitely go meet them at a convention. They always have great stories too, and they're a blast, especially if they're seated near each other. Then it's just chaos. I remember when we were planning out Celebration and we had to like line out your tables, and I was like, oh no, we're putting them near each other. Like, this is gonna, it was a lot of fun though.
It's such a blast. And it is so cool to go do, because I guess when you're doing a live action show or film, there are only maybe 60, 80, 90 people there, but still you feel a lot of people around, different crew members while you're performing, that it does have a sort of energy of people in the space. But when you're doing something like Rebels, there was only the 5 of us in the booth, Dave, a couple producers. No one's really there. So when you go to these conventions and you get to talk to people, it's kind of nice because the whole time we would say to each other, we're like, I wonder if anyone's going to watch this. Like, who knows? Like you don't have anything coming back to you. So when you go out to a convention, you talk to people and you see how people have enjoyed it and it's been entertaining and it's moved them in different ways. It's so cool to have those conversations and hear about the impact that it had, which I think is really sweet. But yeah, this last weekend, it was Vanessa, Tia, and I. And then all 5 of us, I don't think we've all been together since right when the show came out at an event. We're all going to be in Nashville next month together, which is pretty wild awesome. And should be a good time. And if, like you said, if we're seated next to each other, it might be a bit chaotic.
Yeah, we have to smuggle Ashley down there will be the real plan. So
yeah.
Nice. All right. So Nashville. Wait. So do you remember the name of the convention? We'll put this in the chat so everyone can go stalk you guys.
I know it's and it might be 3 C's, 4 C's, 5 C's. I don't know what it stands for.
Yeah.
3 C's.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
ICCC.
Yeah.
Gotcha. One of our members, Catherine, she says she's going. Catherine, I hope you're buying an auto or a photo with all. She says she's going to see all of you guys. So
amazing! Can't wait to see you there.
And meanwhile, I have my little "Where's Ezra" pin. We know where he is. We know where he's going to be a month from now.
I love it.
And that where? By the way, where is he? Like we're waiting. So
yeah, he is out there. That jump. Have you? So when you guys, if you don't mind me asking a question,
go ahead.
You guys do each do you do every episode, or is it you tackle certain episodes that you like, or you'll do arcs?
It's been
a little bit of everything.
We've been figuring it out as we've been going. We've largely built the show around what's been happening in the moment because we thought the reason for this show being is that Rebels is in the moment. So when Obi-Wan was on, we would talk about like the Inquisitors, and we do watch alongs. So we'll actually like watch an episode with people in the chat and talk about the Inquisitors because we just saw them on Obi-Wan. We've done some listicles. We're starting to interview. You're only our second guest, by the way, from the show. Philip Anthony Rodriguez was here last week talking about his performance as the 5th brother. And I've been DMing with some other people from the cast about coming on. So I may have to fly down to Nashville and surprise everyone now. But yeah, we're figuring it out as we go. So it's been really fun, though. It's almost a year that Ashley and I have been doing this with Jeff on the VCN. And they do a Thursday watch along on Mando. So if you like The Mandalorian, you can watch along with them, too. It's been a blast.
That is amazing. Well, one more question. Can I ask what your favorite episode is? Or
Ashley, go first. Yeah.
Oh, man. I would have to say Trials of the Darksaber, and just watching Ezra train Sabine and the growth of both of their characters. Like, instead of just being like, teasing her and just joking around with her, he actually starts to take her a little more seriously. And also Jedi Knight, like that episode, I don't think there's a more emotional episode in Star Wars, at least not that I can think of right now. Tell me about that with you guys. Like, how did you find out about that episode, and what was it like recording it?
This is the episode where Kanan goes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we can say spoilers. Everyone's seen the show.
Okay,
so,
yeah,
we're good.
I'm always this last weekend we were talking about this, and it was funny because the show's been out long enough that nothing should be a spoil, or if it is, that's on whoever is watching, I feel like. But yeah, that episode, it's wild because actually I did not expect to be as emotional as I was, as everyone in the cast was, as Dave was. And the episode that was more emotional, weirdly, but it's because of that episode, is they were so funny about, and this is the one thing that I always thought was funny, and I understood it. And Dave loves to have mystery around. No other project would they keep parts of the script from you so that you knew everything. But if you didn't have a line, like all of the lines leading up to that, we had the script, but then what happens beyond that is just animated. So they had Vanessa scream, but then outside of that, we didn't know what was going to happen. but they would have us go to Disney for certain episodes, like any of the season premieres or finales we would watch. And then certain, like if it was a cool 2 or 3 episode arc in the middle of a season, we would go to the Disney building. We'd watch it basically in like a screening room on a movie theater screen, which was an amazing way to see it. But we watched those episodes that way, I remember, and it hit us so hard, the music and everything leading up to it. But the episode after was the first time we all went into the recording studio and Freddie wasn't there. And that was, it hit we were bawling, everyone. And it was so like, 'cause then we were talking about it, and I get goosebumps right now, actually. We didn't realize how close we had all become. And it's until you like lose that piece that you're made aware how special it is and was. And we couldn't work for a little bit, and we were like, why don't we just talk for a second? And we all just kind of spoke about how much we loved it and what it meant. And it was really, really sweet. And I remember Dave, he's always on the other side of the glass in the control room. The operating booth with the engineer. And he came around into the studio with us, and we were just talking about everything and how that episode had gone down. But yeah, that whole arc of Kanan and the entire Ghost crew was pretty profound, and it really hit all of us. But it's also cool because the way Dave explained it to us is to transcend as a Jedi and become whole. There's that last sort of like selfless act. And he had told me like Ezra needs to reach that as well. And it doesn't necessarily mean they are going to die, but they have to sacrifice the good of themselves for the good of others. And I think that is maybe one of the cooler things in all of Star Wars, and something that transcends Star Wars and goes to real life. And I think that all the time, like, when are there situations when maybe I should be doing this for someone else's sake rather than my own? And it was cool that Ezra at the end of the entire series has that moment and steps up in his way. But yeah, that episode was pretty rough.
I can't imagine, especially how close you guys became over the years of recording together. And I was licensee throughout all this, so I've had sort of a close to front row seat to most of it, and it was incredible. That episode is amazing. You guys did an incredible job with it, and handling the departure of Kanan after the fact, and it was near the end too. Like that episode, Jedi Knight, only comes a few episodes before the whole finale of the show, so we're already ready for what is supposedly the end game. And we had a feeling like all the OG fans like us, you watch the originals, Luke's like the last, Obi-Wan's the last Jedi, right? And then Luke is the only other one or whatever. It's like, or where are Kanan and Ezra? They're not going to make it out of this in some way. So were you surprised where Ezra ended, where he ended up at the end of the finale? And did you know going in, like, what Dave sort of had intended for him beyond the, like, we'll say big sacrifice, like the heroic sacrifice situation?
I didn't exactly. I knew, like I was saying, he had told us, or he told me, that there would be a selfless act, that he would step up. A situation would present itself where Ezra had to make a decision. And that's what we've been following, is will he reach that place of transformation? Because we see him at the very beginning of the show. He's this, very cavalier individual person who doesn't care about anyone beyond himself, and grows to this place where he's willing to sacrifice himself. But again, I didn't get those last pages, like the epilogue that Tia recorded. We didn't see it, and so I had no clue what exactly. I thought maybe he's passed, because like you said, where are the Jedi? I knew that he took off with Thrawn to save them. Where is Ezra? I had no idea. But then Dave, I think it was at a panel after, said that he was still alive out there. When we did the screening for the finale, there was an event that Disney put on, and I was sitting next to Vanessa. I don't remember who was on the other side of me, but I definitely remember Vanessa, because during the epilogue, when they announced that she had a child, she screamed. She's like, what? She had no clue. She grabbed my arm
It's
so
truly an
hard
immaculate
that
conception
I
over
thought
there.
she was gonna like
Yeah.
snap my wrist. She was freaking out because none of us had any clue. Only Tia knew what
Right.
the ending of the
Wow.
show was.
And that's the NDA of NDAs. Like, Tia's smart to not tell anyone any of that. Like that, yeah.
Yeah, I was
Good on
hearing
her.
stories that are so funny this last weekend that I thought I had heard all of the little anecdotes, but there was one that Vanessa had. I think it was for a teaser or a season trailer or something. Dave had her stay after for a session, texted her the lines so that it was never on a computer for anyone at Lucasfilm or anything, or printed out. Texted it to her, had her read it in the booth, then went into the booth, said, "Hey, can I see your phone?" Deleted the message from her phone. And then the epilogue that Tia read for the entire show, again, he didn't want to type it up anywhere. And Dave would often write stuff down, like lines, which I thought was so special because, like, we recorded in Los Angeles. He was up at Lucasfilm up in the Bay Area. And so on sessions, they would fly down. And if he was earlier, then he would go to this like train station and watch trains. That's something that he always talks about loving doing. And he would just write. And if it were notes about the show or about something else or draw, it was like sort of a meditative time. But he would write different lines every now and then because we would have had the script a few days before now and prepared it for the session. But we'd get in for the session. He would often hand us something like, I reworked this. And it had only been a couple hours for it, which was really cool. But for the epilogue that Tia recorded, she just said the other day, he wrote the whole thing down on a piece of paper, gave it to her, and then ripped it up after. Because I never knew where those pages were in the script. And I guess they were never even in the script.
Yeah, being a licensee, I got to tell you, we had a lot of like blackout things, and I would see gaps. And in Jedi Knight, like in Atris, which is where you get your images, that episode just had nothing in it, and I was like, "What is going on?" It was like that type of stuff. Yeah, so you could tell when something's like super important and needs to be highly confidential. How did you manage the confidentiality stuff? Was it challenging dealing with like the NDAs and the passwords and everything else?
It was different. That was for sure. The passwords to get the scripts was always a little funky, but once we were in it, that was all fine and well. I like my scripts printed out, so it was nice that they would print them for you at the booth. But I just like to take notes and sort of have little thoughts and objectives for myself on the script. So that was all fine once we were in the booth, but as far as the confidentiality, they made it difficult when we would do events. And I think that's why we didn't do too many events, because that's when it gets difficult. And Star Wars fans are so good about, one, I love how many theories there are, but they're so good at getting them right that sometimes I'm like, are you seeing the script? Like, how do you know? And you're having to play off. Like, don't get me wrong. There are also some theories that are so far out there that you're like, how did you get to that you have to react to both the same? Otherwise it's like having a poker face. You're giving away the times when you're like, oh, that's right or not right. But I think I was in an easier position than people like Vanessa or Steve, who a lot of their friends know so much about Star Wars, whereas I can admittedly say a lot of my friends are not as hip to it. They are in my close circle of friends, so they weren't ever really bugging me. I had a good amount of friends that they would catch up on stuff and be like, oh, what's going to happen here and there. And if I'm honest, certain people I would tell because I'm like, they're not going to say anything. So there were always some people who did know, but I doubt they were ever going around saying anything.
It's that close circle, the circle of trust. We have a question from Catherine here. She wants to know, what's your favorite Ezra storyline?
Ooh. I have a few. I love the beginning because it's the very beginning of the show. You see who this person is, and I love an introduction of any character. I think it's so important, and it's sort of everything. And so just for that reason alone, and I like where he came from. He also kind of bothered me a bit, and I feel like I went into a place that had to be a bit different than where I wanted to go with character, but you had to start there knowing where it was going to go. And so that was kind of special to me. But then the whole arc with Maul, I just loved because it showed another side of Ezra another possibility. And sometimes you think with people, you're like, oh, well, they're just doing that because they don't know what the other side's like. Whereas he really got a taste of it, and we got to see that. And so I thought it was special, and it was cool to perform as well. And then I also, the end of the show, I love because he kind of becomes whole as a Jedi, and he's very formidable. But the arc, the whole arc with his family, that was sort of under everything. And for me playing it, that was a part of every line. So when they did sort of come to a head and they would speak about it, it just felt very sort of cathartic for me, because it was always in like the reason why he did things and why he was a bit petulant and these different things that you're like, just act this way. But something else was at play, and he didn't have his family, and there was a lot weighing on him. And so when those sort of came through, it was nice to play those bits out. And so a lot of disparate arcs, but I really loved all of it.
I love the fact that you guys you had that start with Ezra, and he was kind of like, you know, like you said, cavalier and careless, but you just see them all grow as a family, and you just couldn't imagine it any other way. So it's like family is not only blood, but it's found. And I think that's what resonates throughout this, and why it's one of my most, it's my favorite thing in Star Wars ever. So I really have to thank you guys, and especially Ezra, just for helping me get through a really difficult time, and you know, having that familiar arc, it really means a lot. So
Absolutely. No, thank you for saying that, because it is a really special thing, and it was curated so carefully, and everyone at Lucasfilm, I think, did such a great job in handling that whole idea of that family is found is so special, and it is also so close to home for so many people, myself included, that we all, you don't know how it's going to go, and you see this beautiful coming together of people and choosing one another and actively choosing and creating a bond that's deeper than anything else, and being willing to sacrifice yourself for the good of everyone else. And I think it was Vanessa this weekend that had said something that I completely forgot about, that was it gave me goosebumps when I heard it this weekend, that the reason they didn't, a lot of shows will end with something like Kanan's death as like the big moment, but they put it in the middle of the season, specifically so you could watch how a family deals and copes with death, rather than just put it at the end. And that's what's important for people to see and be able to work through with these people. And I just think that's very special and really cool. So yeah, thanks for that. I enjoyed all of it.
People ask me all the time, like, what do I love most about Rebels? And I always say it's the family aspect, like the chosen family piece. And Ezra joining this group, and then it's that the Ghost stops feeling like a functional mission team and starts feeling like a family once he arrives. Like it changes the dynamic incredibly. And because of Ezra not having parents and being left on his own, you also see how it opens that door to maybe push him down the dark side path, which that's my favorite arc actually, is everything with Maul. And you could see what would push him to that point. I was actually sort of rooting for dark side Ezra. Did you have fun like sort of getting into that headspace, and did you record with Sam any of that stuff? Because I know he is a trip in person, and I'm sure he could lead you down that path without you even wanting to, you know.
I had a lot of fun recording that arc, and going into that, especially for a character like I've said, other shows I've done, they've been canceled after 2 seasons. You don't get to go so deep into a character, whereas this, there's so many episodes, you really see a lot of the different sides of Ezra. And that was always sort of latent in there, I believe, this idea that he could go that way. And I think because it's believable, it's what makes that arc so strong. He sees the power that comes with acting out of emotion and being a bit brash. And also you have someone like Maul, who's very formidable in himself and convincing, and having him call him apprentice, and it's pretty wild. And we did all of that together. And like you said, Sam Sam Witwer is a special human being. He is hilarious and amazing and knows so much about Star Wars and has a lot of thoughts on Star Wars as well.
He could do a TED Talk for sure. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. He could do a dissertation on Star Wars. It's incredible. Agreed. But it's also funny when he starts going out a little too far with tangents. Dave will be like, Sam, no. That's not the case at all, because he'll have rationales for different things. But we did that together where he was on one side of me and Freddie was on the other. And both of them were in my ear about why I wouldn't go down that path, because Dave was very cool about letting us bring so much of ourselves to these characters. And I need justification for anything I'm going to say as an actor, as a character, and certain things I would be like, well, why wouldn't he go do this? This makes more sense to me, because certain things, and that's the beauty of tragedy. The villain is founded in some truth. Otherwise it wouldn't work at all, where I would be like, well, why wouldn't he at least entertain this if he could then get his way later? And Dave was like, those are the right questions to be asking. And in turn, it meant Freddie and Sam were both going on and on about why I should join this philosophy, really. But yeah, those were so fun to do.
That's the fight to watch, is Freddie versus Sam in a throwdown of Star Wars philosophy. I've been in a green room with both of them, and don't ask them a question if you need to be somewhere, because they will tell you the answer, and it will be a very detailed, very well thought out, known answer. They are as deep in the fandom as anyone hosting a YouTube channel. It's amazing. Oh,
it's incredible. And bring snacks and maybe a sleeping bag, because it will go on. It is, but it's amazing. And they're so entertaining. I love both those guys. They're fantastic.
Good times. So you've recorded with Sam, you've recorded Freddie, the whole rest of the crew. Do you have any memorable moments from the recording booth of anything crazy happening or anything really out there, anything fun, any bloopers that you guys like couldn't keep it together for? You know, there's some great humor in Rebels as well. And I think it's one of the funniest parts of all of Star Wars.
The Melu Run heist I can think of in particular, like that episode was just fun and crazy.
Anytime you got to chase down that fruit, there's always some kind of nonsense, like, which I think Rebels handles really well.
Absolutely. And I love that you said it, because it's always weird talking about a show you're in or making a claim like that. But I think it's one of the funnier things in Star Wars as well. And it's good. Like, it's good. And everyone in our cast was great with the humor. And I think it's because it was founded in very honest, specific characters. So the circumstance makes a lot of things funny situationally. And the Melu Run episode, funny enough, that was one of the few words, because obviously there are some strange words that you use in Star Wars. There are different species that you're talking about, different fictional fruits. And Melu Run, for some reason, every person in our cast, every single person had issues with it. Like, we would have to say certain lines so many times because you would be going on about this and that, and then you'd say Melu Run, and either someone would start cracking up, or they would pronounce it strangely, or it just didn't make sense. And so that was a very interesting, funny thing. But it was also great because our dynamic grew to this point where we'd always stand at the same mics. And then when other characters would come in, especially if they were on the dark side, let's say, or not necessarily with us. Hondo was this sort of variable that you never knew where he was going to go. He was hilarious.
Oh, Jim. Yeah.
Jim is fantastic. But like, when the Inquisitors were there or anything, we would put them on the other side of the booth. So it felt like it was like us against them.
Wow.
And
I love that.
Jason Isaacs, he was fantastic. And when he was in through the first season, no one had to open this one closet. The booth there's these big screens and there's a bunch of cameras everywhere because they're filming you from different angles to send off to the animators. And then these music stands with your scripts. Outside of that, and the microphone, there's not much. There's like a carpet, but there's this little like closet in the corner, and no one had the sense to ever open it. But Jason Isaacs, I remember, he was in there, it was between takes, he opened it up. There was a whole putting green that you could roll out and golf clubs. And all of a sudden we're like doing a take and he's over there just like chipping golf balls. And we're like, this is the funniest thing that anyone has ever done in a session. And we've all still spoken about it because it was just that down, then we all would open it and we would all start chipping these wiffle balls. But it took Jason Isaacs coming in to actually go for it. But
So
yeah,
you guys are
we
ringers
had
at mini
so much
golf
fun.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We had so much fun doing it. And it's funny, I should think back more on it because I have such fond memories of it, but I haven't thought back to some of those recording sessions that were so amazing. It was a really, really good time.
I love Ezra's growth from it's kind of like two sides of the same coin, from when he began his training with Kanan, and then he continued his training, especially in the World Between Worlds episode with Ahsoka. Her kind of teaching him, like, you can't be emotional about this. If you go and save Kanan, the rest of you will die. And just kind of giving him that perspective and that calmness, like, you can't change what's going to happen. You can save me, but some things just had to happen. What was it like for you recording that and just knowing how far Ezra has come in that time period?
It was cool. I felt like, because you feel a real sense of ownership. I felt proud of like Ezra for the growth and getting to that place. And speaking of that, that was my favorite episode, I think, was World Between
World Between Worlds.
So that was one that when we went and saw at Disney, it was one of the first times I was like, whoa, that's so cool. I've never seen anything like that. And I remember like the hair stood up on the back of my neck when you would hear through these different, I'm going to call them portals, but like you could hear other parts of the Star Wars universe. I think it was Leia at one point, and different voices come through, and you're like, it's all connected, and how every decision you make changes the future. And the fact that he had saved Ahsoka, and like you said, he'd really become a formidable Jedi, and it was a lot. Just the visuals were so cool. I thought it was really special, but I felt proud of Ezra for getting to that place. And it also just makes you think like how much more he's capable of.
I think we're going to see some of that too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
By the way, you're spectacular as Ezra, and while the official live action casting of Ezra has not been officially revealed, can you say anything about what you know about that? Is it you? I guess is really the big one. Or do you know anything that's happening? Anything you can say? I would never ask you to say anything that you're
no. Fair. There have been different talks. I know there are things that come out, various things, but I think we will be seeing some Ezra. Now that we've seen Zeb in Mandalorian, we will be seeing, I think, all of the Rebel characters in different spaces in the live action series, or I don't know about films. I'm going to say series. But yeah, that's about it. I don't know so many. I mean, the fact that I didn't get certain parts of some of the scripts shows how locked down they are with everything. Even when announcements and certain things come out, I don't know what exactly is or isn't or whatever it might be.
Right. No, understandable. We have a few questions from the chat that I wanted to make sure we got in because we do have about 10 minutes left with you. Wanted to hit some of these questions.
All right, Mark, there's a handful from YouTube as well. So
yeah. Oh, I was going to start there actually, because there's a question about merch. Essentially, do you own a replica of Ezra's lightsaber? And in that same topic, do you have like a favorite piece of Ezra merch? I'm sure you have all the Ezra merch, right?
It's funny, Lucasfilm is so good, or maybe Disney, I don't know who it was coming from, but they were so good about sending us merch. And I never got I have that one. That's the speeder bike.
Yes, love that one.
I do have that one. I need to, because I want to give not just a thoughtful answer, I want to give an honest answer as to what my favorite piece of merch is, but I never had the updated green saber, but that early one, which I think is one of the coolest sabers ever, because who has a blaster on their saber? That's so sick.
So good.
I had a roommate when we were doing the show. This is 8 years ago. During it, when 7 years ago, whenever it was, I had the blaster that had the saber that had the blaster on it. And my roommate hated it because I would fire those things everywhere. They'd be under the couch, under the kitchen table. It was hilarious. But I thought that saber was so cool. I love how they have so many different versions. Like they did a black series, which I think is very cool. I think 2 different black series. But this is, for me, it was a funny story, or maybe a bit of a scary story, or just it freaked me out. We did a video game. I think it was called Disney Xfinity.
Infinity, yes. Oh
Infinity.
man, I love that game.
Okay, so I had just moved. I just got a new place, and I moved in, and I was by myself. You know how it is when like there's not. I had my bed set up. That was basically it. Nothing in any of the rooms, and a TV. And I remember I had made some dinner, and they'd sent me the thing. And that recording session was harder than any recording session that we ever had on Rebels, because
Wow.
you said you had like something like 1,000 lines, and then you said everything 3 different ways. It was like, okay, jump, then jump like you're jumping 5 feet, and then jump like you're jumping 10 feet, or scream. Okay, scream like you got punched, like you got kicked. And there were like these tiny little differences. And I remember by the end, I was like, that was incredibly exhausting. But they sent me the thing, and there's a little figurine that you would put on top of the game to play it. And I was like, I never played. I wasn't huge on video games, and I hadn't played one that was this way, where you could actually like be a character. And I think I was trying something where I was like racing Ezra or something like this. And I started hearing my voice saying the things like in response to what I was doing. And it freaked me out so much that I gave the game away. I was like,
oh no.
Wow.
And I gave it to my friend. I was like, I can't do this. It's so strange. But it was such like a funky thing to hear in that way. But that merch was always very cool that they sent along to us.
Your voice is pretty close to Ezra's voice. What would you say is like the key distinction? And I know you said you were newer to voice acting when you started this role. Did any of the veterans from the cast give you any feedback or coaching as you were like finding Ezra's voice?
They were so cool about certain elements they didn't talk anything about voice. It was nice because, so in my training, I did a lot of voice training. I did a conservatory. And so in that, you have to do a lot of voice training, but it wasn't necessarily, it's for like character voice, not necessarily just voiceover. And so the thing that I found so incredible with voiceover is that, I mean, I can rely on so many different faculties on screen. I can emote with just my face, my movement, the way I hold myself as a character. That says so much about me. But when you're doing voiceover, you have to bring that all just into the mic. But with Ezra, it's funny because Dave was like, look, Ezra's going to be going to a bunch of different places and using different voices, putting things on. We hear him throw his voice in different ways, a bit comedically throughout the series, that I wanted something that would be a base that felt close to him being on voice, meaning like coming from his heart voice, really. And so all I really started with, the only difference was I knew he was going to age, and Dave had told me that early on. So we just pitched it up. So earlier seasons, he's talking up here and everything is like that. And then as we got later to where he's at, it's Spectre 6 to Ghost, and it's my voice. Like I wasn't doing anything too different. There is a little like vocal fry that I always sort of put on it. And then that was it. Like it wasn't, whereas Steve, what he was doing is so fascinating. Or take like D. Bradley Baker. I think it's so special what they're doing. But I always wanted to, and something that I really would work on throughout the seasons was just staying on, and everyone uses different terminology for it, but I just say heart voice, like where it is truthfully in me, and then going to the different places where the lines would be honest for Ezra in that way.
That's beautiful. Ashley, what other questions do we have for Taylor? I know I was scrolling through the chat. We had one person wants to know if you used any props while you were recording. It sounds like you had golf clubs there. That would have been a lightsaber for me instantaneously.
Yeah.
If I would have found that, I would have been swinging around. I would have broke a boom mic. I would have been fired day one.
Yeah, it's funny for the sabers, because a handful of us obviously have to use sabers. It was always a pen for everybody. Like, I don't know why. It made sense. It was right there, but we would always, and even when you weren't thinking about it, like times when it wasn't a concerted effort, I would grab the pen just to have, and you would be doing different things. But I remember the first session we had, and I've told this story multiple times, but the first take we did, and this is where what you're saying earlier about having some legends of voiceover help out. We did the scene, but it was like I was talking to Steve, and then I was talking to Freddie, and I was talking to Tia, and we were going back and forth. And Dave leaned into the mic. He was like, "That was a great first take of Star Wars Rebels, but Taylor, could you please say it into the mic, because we caught about a quarter of the dialogue."
Oh no!
And so I started to. I don't know if anyone else did this. They were able to just play into the mic the whole time. If I had a scene with Freddie and he was to my left, I would take the mic stand and turn it so that I could, because that way I could look at him, and I just feel like it even if it was the slightest difference, I was talking into him, you know what I mean? And so that was something I always was wary of, making sure I said it into the mic.
Got it.
So we see Ezra with a variety of different helmets earned through his, fights with some bucket heads. Which one was your favorite in the whole series?
I would say one that he earned the most, but there was one just off of the aesthetics. I really love this one that's like a biker helmet. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they made some merchandise where he has that, and I would say that one was pretty cool. As far as the disguises that he would get, it was fun when I'm trying to think the one where he has the helmet on. I'm gonna conflate different storylines. When he's in the academy, I thought that was also very cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool.
Yeah, when he infiltrates
and
to
I also love
extract.
When he says that he's Jabba the Hutt. I always love that. It just cracks me up.
Any of your episodes, once Hondo's on the scene, man, I mean, he should have his own show. Who are we kidding?
Oh yeah.
Like Star Wars : Hondo, like, should just be a thing. And I don't care what they do, where they go, what time period, sign me up. He's a blast. And Ezra's interactions with him are just perfect, because you were saying that, like, being truthful, you know how Darkseid could like pull you in and you're like, well, I'll get what I want out of this, and then we'll just pull back, right? Hondo's a little bit like that too, and it's just a lot. It's very playful, but without being too serious. Even though he did try to murder people numerous times, it still comes across like endearing.
But he has such respect for Ezra and even Kanan to an extent that, like, anything shiesty you guys see coming a mile away, but you still work with him. And it's just a lot of fun to watch, just him be like, "Oh, I like you, Ezra Bridger," and so much fun. And recording with a legend like Jim Cummings, did he have any tips for you in the studio? Or
not many tips, but something that I took from him, because you're always, what is it that they say, like, stealing inspiration from artists, and something that I thought was so special with him was he always, and I guess he kind of does it with any session, he brings in these, I think they're the like feather drumsticks, you know what I'm talking about? Like, people play them on snare drums often. It's a bunch of like little sticks together, and it makes this sort of it's like a very soft sound, as opposed to that percussive, just like loud drumstick hit. But he would have them in his back pocket, and he would always I think it's very important as an artist to stay in flow state, and that's like meditating every day, doing yoga, just staying in a place where your heart is open and vulnerable, and you lead from a place where you can tap into these different emotions, and you're affected by the world. Jim was so good at doing that, just even in sessions, because it can be a bit tense when it's like, oh, we're running out of time, especially like outside of that, when you're on a set where you're worried about the daylight and you're like, we need to get this shot. He would have these drumsticks and always sort of be playing them in between stuff and staying so loose and cracking jokes. And I think it really, while it made so much sense for Hondo, it's just a good place to stay in as an artist. And that was something, by example, I really admired, and I thought it was really cool that he did that.
It's awesome. Cool. We are just about at time, but did want to ask you one final question. Your 5 years recording the show, being on air, being part of the Star Wars family, what is your favorite moment from all of it? If you could pinpoint one moment, I'm sure that's a hard one. And what kind of wish do you have for Star Wars Rebels on like a go forward, knowing that like the Ahsoka show is coming and that all of us we're kind of rewatching the show again? It's kind of crazy right now that Rebels is like so hot and in the fandom. Do you have a wish for all of the Rebels fans out there?
Yeah, absolutely. To what you said, it's funny that people are rewatching it, and it because you don't get that with too many things. And I heard that this last weekend, but I saw some article, I think it was IGN or Collider or something, that someone had sent me, that they did like the like Star Wars shows ranked, the top 15 or something. And they had Rebels #2. And I didn't expect it to be that high. I was like, oh, that's so amazing. And it was sweet to see. And it ties in with, I love how it's connected with people. And so my favorite moment, while I loved everything we did in the booth, I loved the first time when we met, I loved seeing the growth of every person and every character. It's stuff like this, but being at the big events that Lucasfilm will put on, when you saw what everything meant to people and you heard the different sentiments, and because you really do, you put your heart and you put everything into every different character. And some characters very few people see, and other characters a lot of people see, and you never really know what it is. And it's not always necessarily based on how well you didn't do it. It's out there though, and it's nice to see your heart received and to be in that space with people. And I think Star Wars is so cool because of the fan base and the interaction of art is meant to be enjoyed and perceived and received. And that sort of relationship with people who watch the show is really, really special. And so I think that would be my favorite part of it, is when we would go premiere an episode, or like a season premiere or something, or even a clip, and you saw people get excited for it because they knew why this was happening, or why you said a line that way, or whatever it might be. I just thought that was so special. And the fact that these characters are in the world, in Star Wars, that people have connected with them, I love that they're now going on and seeing different parts of the universe, and they're going to interact with other characters, and maybe they'll help guide other characters, or they might just inform something else that connects with a fan and hits them in a way. And I think that's what's so special about Star Wars. So I hope everyone with every character continues to handle them with care and treat them with everything they have and put their heart into it. And I think that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I agree. I wish the same. I'm enjoying what's happening with all the Disney Star Wars stuff right now. Mando's been really fun. Seeing all the Rebels connections has been great. And but Rebels is still Ashley and I are our favorite show. That's why we do this YouTube thing every Monday. We rewatch frequently. And I gotta say, this has been a blast. It's been a dream. It's been fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I haven't seen any. I guess people are watching it now, but thank you guys for listening and for watching Rebels. And I hope you guys continue to enjoy everything that Star Wars puts out.
We're thrilled to have you. If you ever want to come back, you're always invited. Hopefully we'll see you at an event soon. Everyone remember to follow Taylor Gray on Instagram and on Twitter. You see Taylor Gray 3 on Instagram. I am Taylor Gray on Twitter. And of course, find him and the entire Ghost crew in Nashville at ICCC, which somehow I didn't hear about. And now I've got to book a plane ticket to Nashville. So we're going to have to take a family trip out of this.
Yes, we are.
So, and then, of course, keep up on social media to see all of Taylor's future stops and everything else going on. And we're going to find out where Ezra is. And when it happens, we will be sure to, I'm sure you'll see a thing. And when it says hashtag Ezra lives, you're going to have that moment. And it's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
I really hope you guys can do Rhode Island too. Rhode Island Comic-Con is a big premiere Star Wars heavy event in Providence, Rhode Island. Mark and I go every year. It's a big draw for Star Wars actors and voiceover actors, and it'd be great to have you guys.
I will put in a word because, like I said, I do really love doing them, and I haven't done too many. And this last weekend reminded me how cool and special they are. So that'd be awesome. And I love it out there. I just did a film at the end of the year out in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So
wow.
it'd be nice to get back out there.
Be on the lookout for that. Yeah, Rhode
Very
Island's
cool.
a great one. I'll DM you some details because Steve and Mary have been before, and a bunch of other
Nice.
people from Ashley and Matt Lanter and James Arnold Taylor. A bunch of them have done that
Keone,
show.
yeah.
And a bunch
Very
of
cool.
live
Dante,
action people
yeah.
from Mando. Yep. Well, that is tonight. That's our show
Yeah.
for Rebels Revisited. Thank you everyone for joining us. Remember to tune into the VCN this week. We've got happy hour tomorrow, Thursday night watch along. Oh my God, if you're in London on Wednesday, it is the Not So Virtual Cantina real life meetup with real people in person. How amazing is that? Celebration starts on Friday. So tune into the Celebration Nightly News with Ashley, Jeff, and Dave Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So next Monday, there will not be a Rebels Revisited because of Celebration, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. But we are busy all week and we are ready to see you all in London for Celebration. So thank you guys again. And as always, we should have Taylor say it. You should tell everyone to say, "May the Force be with you." You're the Jedi in the room.
Yes.
So we'll follow your lead.
Thank you guys so much. Spectre 6 saying, "May the Force be with you always." See you guys.
Bye, guys.